Ranjan, it's a delight to be with you today. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I'm, the first thing I should say is I live in the eastern part of the country in a small village. And it's amazing. It feels good to be sitting in a small village and communicating to the world, because it's always the big cities, Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, that get to speak to international audiences. So I'm glad to be part of a small village community speaking to the world. I'm Ranjan Solomon, and I grew up in Bangalore. I grew up in a majority Muslim community, which also had a number of Christians and Hindus. I studied in a Christian school where I think the most important thing was we were not aware of our religions, we were not aware of our caste, we were not aware of our class traditions. We were just a happy bunch of young kids. That was me.
So you grew up as a Christian within a minority in what is a predominantly Hindu society. What was that like for you?
It really, in those days, I'm talking about the 50s. I wasn't conscious of the fact that we were a multi-religious or a multicultural community. Those were the days of celebration of humanity, of community. We really could celebrate the fact that we were all different, that we celebrated different festivals, and each festival gave us a treat. We had treats in our so life itself was something which we celebrated. Our diversity was a matter of celebration. Today, sadly, no, but it was a matter of celebration. And when I think back, I wish we could go back to those days.
Sorry, how is India changing then?
I think India is changing in a way that is scary, very discouraging. From what was a secular society, and this is even written into our constitution, that we are a secular society, where all faiths are equal, regardless of the numbers that we could count in each faith. But every religion had equal rights. Every religion was accepted as part of the nation. That we were multicultural, multi-religious, and everything about us didn't need to conflict. There were no conflicts at that time. Of course, there has always been in the country a certain amount of tension between the Muslims and the Hindus, and there have been so-called communal conflicts. And these conflicts have always been sparked off by the need for political supremacy of the Hindus. So there's always been a Hindu right wing that has been at work, that has been trying to make devils out of the Muslims. The Christians were never affected so seriously at that point in time. I think as time went on, the Christians became suspect of those guys who come from the West to convert us and to force us to convert into Christianity. And this whole talk about forced conversions is now taking place.
So Christians are suffering persecution now, is that correct?
Yes. It's huge. I mean, it's amazing that in the last 5 or 6 years, they don't even bother to hide it. It's open. It's as open as that. We have formed ourselves into groups that have gone even to the United Nations Commission on Human Rights to put forward the case for the protection of Christian minorities and also the Muslims. But the Christian minority thing is something new, and there has been and a lot of we started off when in 1948 we got our freedom. We were 2.3% of the population. Today we are still 2.3% of the population. So where did the claim about conversions come? We haven't been doing that. Even those 2.3% live in certain parts of the country, mostly in the northeastern part, in Kerala, in Goa, where I live. And that's where it is. just one instance, which I should illustrate my argument with. Graham Staines, an evangelist who came to work in India, worked in Odisha on the eastern part of the country. And his work was to uplift the indigenous communities. He worked for the poorest. And one fine day, the Bajrang Dal, which is the street front of the BJP, decided that he had to be killed. And so when Pastor Graham Staines was sleeping on a truck with his two children, the whole truck was set on fire. And they said he was converted. So there was an independent group of Hindus and others who went to investigate what Graham Staines might have been doing, only to find that the number of Christians had actually fallen in the area that he was working in. So these are constructs, political constructs to discredit the minorities. And this is happening even today, all the time. The accusations. There's just one more point I think that I want to make. Right now, many Christians, especially among the indigenous communities, are being persecuted and asked to return to Christianity. It's called Ghar Wapsi, that means come home. And there is persecution of those who will not come home, who say, we stand by our religion. We have no problem living with Hindus. We have no problem living with. We are not animists anymore. We did get converted because we were convinced.
So how can, through your efforts and your colleagues, how do you believe that India can become more tolerant and respectful of its religious minorities?
The religious minorities are not quite persecuted by the entire majority. There is majoritarianism. That's a fact. There is majoritarianism, and you see that politically being played out against the minorities. But I think there are a large number of secular Hindus among the intellectual class of people. The intellectuals, the progressive radicals, the left parties, and even the centrist parties who believe that we are a secular country. That isn't written into our constitution. That should not be touched. So the movement for a secular India is beginning now to gain more popularity. People are beginning to say we must retain the secular character of our country, because that secularism says we are multicultural, we are multi-religious, we are multi-ethnic, and this is the most beautiful part of our country. We cannot surrender this to a group of people who are right-wing and who hate. And Rahul Gandhi keeps saying this all the time. He says, we should retrieve the country from the market of hate to the market of love and construct love.
That's really helpful. If we're running out of time, Ranjan, I'm sorry, but if folk would like to know more about the situation in India, either about the Christian minority or about your hopes for the future, what would you recommend they read or view online?
I think if people would go to a website of an organization called Hindus for Human Rights, Hindus for Human Rights. They're all over the world, but they started in the US. It's a very progressive, radical movement, and it's a movement which says to the world that Muslims, Christians, and people of all faiths, especially people of caste, of caste status, which is considered to be low, must all be protected. That human rights is the first thing that we must protect.
That's really helpful, Ranjan. We'll put a link to Hindus for Human Rights linked to our interview. Ranjan, thank you so much for illuminating us into the situation in India. Our hope and our prayers is that India will become a more tolerant, respectful society for all faiths. Thank you so much. Bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.